The topic this morning is Africa and Haiti, economic and social development in those two areas. And we're fortunate to have with us this morning a person to talk about social and economic developments in Haiti, Dr. LMadu1. Dr. LMadu1 is an international lawyer. In addition, he is the editor of a human rights journal published here in Tennessee, as well as the chairman of Clergy and Laity Concerned. And Dr. LMadu1, let me welcome you to the show this morning.
Thank you.
Dr. LMadu1, I think we've had an opportunity to talk to you about a number of issues dealing with Haiti, the African-American month experience, and a number of other things. And of course, you've always brought us excellent information. Let's have you to talk about what we consider to be two very, very significant areas today, and that is the continent of Africa and Haiti. First, let's start off by having you to give us some general information about Africa itself.
Well, the political problems in Africa continue. You know, there are bad and good ones, but I would start by telling you about the good news in Africa before the bad news. You know, most people want to hear about the bad news all the time, but Africa is not all bad news. You know, there are a lot of good news. In Benin Republic, you know, there has been a peaceful transfer of power. The former military ruler there, General Kerekou, graciously handed over power to Nicéphore Soglo, you know, who won the elections, one of the few countries in Africa to have that kind of transition. Botswana is still very much stable, one of the few countries in Africa that has never experienced a coup, you know, very progressive in Southern Africa of all places. The Ivory Coast just experienced a very peaceful transfer of power. Félix Houphouët-Boigny, who was the president for long, you know, died a few months ago and was succeeded by Henry Konan Bédié, who was the Speaker of the National Assembly. Ghana has been stable, you know, for some time now since Rawlings took over. The economic situation is improving, you know, even though some people don't think so. But with the exception of some minor problems, the country has been stable. Tanzania has also been stable. President Nyerere, who was a long-time ruler of that country, a few years ago, you know, handed over power to Ali Hassan Mwinyi, who is still the president. Stability still reigns in Tanzania. I've said Botswana, Central African Republic. You remember the famous Jean Bodel Bokassa, who made himself emperor. Okay, the country has, you know, undergone a peaceful transfer of power now. General Kolemba, who was the president, was defeated in an election and graciously handed over power to the current president, Angie Patase, who was a long-time opposition leader. Then you have Senegal, that has been very stable. Leopold Sédar Senghor, who was the president for long, you know, handed over power about 10 years ago to Abdou Diouf, who is the president. Very peaceful country. And of course, Zimbabwe, that became independent in 1980, and Robert Mugabe had, you know, carefully steered that country towards a very stable course, which, of course, should be an example to Nelson Mandela, you know, to follow in South Africa, since Mugabe succeeded in co-opting, you know, the white establishment into you know, the government than, you know, driving them away. Well, of course, you have the bad places in Africa still. Mozambique. Mozambique, after almost 20 years of warfare, you know, it's now settling down. There's a peace agreement now between President Chissano and the leader of the Renamo, Alfonso Dhlakama. What is happening now is the UN is helping to integrate, you know, the two forces into a unified army. So that's good news. Angola is still the mess it has been since 1975. You remember in 1992 there was a ceasefire and the UN-sponsored election in which Jonas Savimbi, who is the leader of UNITA, lost in the elections but refused to accept it. So he resumed fighting again, you know, against the MPLA government in Rwanda. Over 1 million people have died really in Angola in the past since 1992 when this warfare started all over again. Of course, you have the problem in the Sudan. You know, this problem has been there for long. First of all, there was a rebellion that started in 1956 and ended in 72, you know, by the Southerners against Northerners. Now, after a decade of peace, in 1983, the problem started again because the Central Sudanese government, you know, dominated by the Arab North, was intent, you know, in imposing Islamic rule throughout the Sudan, which is, you know, half and half. Muslim in the north, Christians in the south. And the government, the central government, didn't think it could accommodate Christianity in the south without trying to impose their own religion. That's the problem now between both sides of the Sudan, and that will continue for a foreseeable future. Even though the current president, Omar Bashir, had tried to negotiate a kind of agreement with John Garang, who is the leader of the rebels in the south. But because the sticking point still remains that religious imposition, by the north. Of course, you have Cameroon. Cameroon has some problems now with Nigeria on the border. There's a place called Bakassi Island that Cameroon claimed the former Nigerian ruler gave to them orally to get their support during the Nigerian Civil War. Now, Nigerian government says, no, we want that place back. So there's a kind of tension, between the two governments. And of course, Nigeria itself is in a political turmoil. The army canceled an election, that was held last year that elected Moshood Abiola as president. But the army said, well, no, he did not win the election and canceled it. So back to square one, the problem continues. In Chad Republic, there are still some conflicts there since General Idris Deby became the president when he overthrew Hissène Habré. Habre's forces are still, creating some problems for General Deby. Then, of course, you have Djibouti on the border between Ethiopia and Somalia. There are some rebels now trying to overthrow the government of Hassan Gouled Abtidon. The French paratroopers have been flown in into Djibouti to help crush the rebellion. Lesotho is also experiencing some problems. Lesotho just had what you call a free and fair election, won by an aging revolutionary called Nsumo Hele. A few weeks ago, there was a mutiny in the army trying to topple his regime. Without the oral intervention of South Africa threatening to come in if the rebels succeed, the coup would have been successful. Well, of course, the deputy prime minister, was killed in the process. Of course, Zaire, which has been under long-time President Mobutu Sese Seko, is experiencing a lot of problems. Mobutu had initially, accepted to have a multi-party elections, and an interim prime minister in the person of Etienne Tshisekedi was appointed. But Mobutu fired Tshisekedi, and instead, wanted to keep control of the army. So the problem in Zaire now is still going on. Nobody knows how it will end, either in the downfall of Mobutu or civil war, as happened in the 1960s. Somalia, of course, is still the way it was, though there's no heavy fighting as usual, because General Aidid and LMadu Mohammed, have signed a tenuous peace agreement that is still holding. But of course, with the clannishness involved in the situation, fighting might break up, anytime soon. Congo-Brazzaville still also in the midst of the political crisis. There has been fighting in Brazzaville, between the supporters of the elected president Pascal Lissouba and those supporting Denis Sassou Nguesso. This is, of course, is mainly